Attention humanitarian and development professionals. Are you looking to take your career to the next level? Then you've come to the right place. Humanitarian Global offers self-paced online courses designed specifically for you. With our comprehensive curriculum, you'll build your capacity in the most critical areas of humanitarian and development work. Our course offerings include monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning, water, sanitation and hygiene, disaster risk reduction and management, food security and nutrition in emergencies, procurement and supply chain management, human nutrition and dietetics, maternal, infant and young child nutrition. With Humanitarian Global, you'll have the opportunity to grow your skills and impact the lives of people in need. Visit our website to learn more about our courses and apply today.
Hello, everyone, once again, and thank you so much for joining. Hello to those participants I do see engaging in the chat section. Good morning, good afternoon to all based on where you're joining us from. And hello also to all the participants joining us via Facebook Live, and welcome to this webinar. As I mentioned, this is a free webinar for humanitarians and development practitioners, also those who look to go into these fields, hosted by Humanitarian Global. And today we're going to be covering social and behavior change communication, where the topic is crisis communication and SBCC, lessons from global emergencies. Our key speaker for the day is Margret Luvuze, and I will be your moderator. My name is Diana. Before we dive into the webinar, I'd like to welcome our panelists to be able to say hello to the team. I will start with Sheila from Humanitarian Global. Sheila, welcome.
Hi, everyone. As you've been told, my name is Sheila, part of the academics team here at Humanitarian Global, and I do look forward to great interactions as well as great learning from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We also do have colleagues from Humanitarian Global as well, who work behind the scenes to ensure that the webinar runs smoothly, who are also engaging you in the chat and Q&A sections. And on behalf of Ian, Brian, and Anthony, I do send their salutations. With us, we also have our expert for the day, Margret Luvuze. Margret, you can say hello to the team.
Wherever you're joining from, welcome to today's presentation. I look forward to engaging conversation on crisis communication and to understand better. This is like an after action review of our outbreaks management and communication. So welcome, and I look forward to the engagement.
Thank you so much, Margret. And as we proceed, just a note, your voice is very low, so maybe if you could speak up or move closer to the microphone. Before we proceed, I'd like to mention a few house rules for this webinar. So house rule number 1 is do engage us in the chat section. I encourage us to be very active in the chat section in terms of we are going to be sharing details on the courses, including SBCC and WASH, which are covered under today's topic for the webinar. And in case if you're interested in taking up these courses, you can always click on the links and register. Alternatively, you can share with us your personal details. This is your phone number and your email address, and we'll be able to reach out to you with more information on the courses. House rule number 2 is keep the Q&A section strictly for questions regarding today's topic. As Margret presents, you might have a few questions on SBCC. Remember, today's topic is crisis communication and SBCC, lessons from global emergencies. So as she continues with her presentation, I encourage us to put all the questions in the Q&A section, because at the end of her presentation, she will have a session where she will be addressing these questions. And sometimes if you put it in the chat section, it might be lost or it might not be picked up. During this Q&A session, we will be having participants who wish to to ask their questions live during the webinar, we will allow them to speak. So for this bit of our webinar, we will ask participants who wish to ask questions live on the webinar to raise their hands, and we will allow them to speak. So until then, kindly refrain from raising your hand because we might not be able to attend to your needs throughout Margret's presentation. In case if you're facing any technical difficulties or you need any kind of assistance, engage us in the chat section, and that is where we will be able to pick up those queries, those questions, or any kind of assistance you do need. So those are the few house rules, and I kindly request that we all abide by. Before I bring on Margret to present, to give us her presentation for the day, I'd like to mention just one or two things. This is regarding our upcoming trainings on specifically. Allow me to share my screen. As you know, we've had a number of new trainings that we've been conducting, as well as our ongoing regular trainings. And some of the trainings that we are finishing the year with include WASH training, SBCC training. We have a lot on data collection and analyzing, including data collection for humanitarians using COBOL Toolbox, Open Data Kit, as well as data analytics and visualization using SPSS and Power BI. We have training on monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, and other trainings that cover project management or any humanitarian aid development fields, which include fundraising and resource mobilization for NGOs, proposal and report writing, as well as leadership and project management for NGOs. Today, I'll just focus on two trainings, and we will be sharing these links in the chat section. So look out for the links that we will be sharing in the chat section. So the WASH training, specifically, this covers SDG 6 of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is access to clean water. And our upcoming trainings are from the 27th to the 1st of December. We have a physical training, as well as this training will be happening here at the Humanitarian Global Training Center in Nairobi. It will be 5 days, and it is $750 for the in-person training. Just to focus a little bit on the course objectives, you get to understand all the concepts covered under water and sanitation. You also get to see how influence on hygiene in our everyday to-day lives, in our communities, in even the places of work, or everywhere there is the hygiene aspects, and how it influences our daily lives, and how to manage that, as well as how to promote hygiene. We get to understand about water quality testing. This includes the tools and the designs, including software and hardware WASH equipment. And then we get to successfully see how WASH projects are implemented. So that is what you can expect while undertaking this WASH training. It's a very comprehensive WASH training, as you can see from the WASH training program that I'm displaying on the screen. And even at the end of your training, you get to cover hygiene promotion. This is after you've learned all the concepts, you've learned all the software, hardware, WASH financing, you've covered sanitation approaches. This includes also CLTS, which is covered quite extensively in anyone who's working in humanitarian development and aid fields. So at the very end of this training, you will receive digital certification. This is a digital badge which is issued by HPAS on behalf of Humanitarian Global. HPAS is an organization that does accredit other organizations such as Humanitarian Global that offers trainings in humanitarian development and aid fields. So that is the upcoming WASH training, and I encourage us to click on this link, learn more about the WASH training and what we offer. The next one would be SBCC. So this is Social and Behavior Change Communication Training. And SBCC is actually one of the biggest areas that humanitarian development aid fields, organizations, NGOs, international organizations are moving towards. So it is communication. And like I did mention, this kind of communication is geared towards influencing the knowledge, attitudes, norms of a society, of people. So how do you go about that? So from the training objectives, you can expect to learn about the principles, the key strategies of SBCC, as well as communication planning. At the very end of your training, you will be able to have prepared your own communication strategy and creative brief. And beyond this, you should also be able to effectively monitor and evaluate SBCC campaigns. So the training program is also outlined there. And like I did mention, we start with introduction to SBCC. We learn about the principles, and then we go about the C planning process of creating your own communication strategy, as well as how to monitor and evaluate SBCC campaigns. Again, at the very end of this training, you will receive a digital certification from HBAS on behalf of Humanitarian Global. The upcoming dates, we have we have the online one that is from the 4th to 8th of December 2023. So I encourage you to sign up for this, because remember, here at Humanitarian Global, we take a very limited number to ensure that your interaction with the trainer is very effective, that you're able to understand the trainer, that you're able to move with the class. So we take very few numbers, maximum of 10, and it's on a first come, first serve basis. The physical training workshop, the next one, other than the one from next week, will be happening on the 4th to the 6th of December 2023. So to register, kindly come, click on register on any, and there will be a form that will be generated, and fill in that form with your details. So this is the form. Ensure you fill in the form with the correct details. And at the training workshop program, come and select the program that you'd want, and then select the training delivery method that you would prefer. And once you've clicked submit, our team will be able to reach out to you to finalize on your registration and enrollment. So like I have said, we will be sharing the links for these trainings on the chat section. So look out for them. And in case if you're interested in learning more or even other trainings, you can just share your details in the chat section. We'll be able to pick them up and reach out to you. With that said, I'd like to welcome Margret to give us a very, very good presentation on crisis communication and SBCC. And this is from the lessons from global emergencies. Margret, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Diana. Hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you so much. So allow me to share my screen so that you can start with the presentation. So welcome to today's presentation on crisis communication and SBCC. And we'll be able to see learn from lessons from global emergencies, and in particularly from COVID-19, which was just a global pandemic, and it was just recently, so we are all familiar with. And my name is Margret Luvuze, and welcome. So as we all know, crisis communication is all about how to communicate with the public when there is emergency. That is it. How do you communicate? How do you share information? How do you share risk and all that? So that's what we'll be discussing today. And I welcome you to make the chat busy with your question and answers and comments and all that. So welcome. And we'll start with the introduction on SBCC. We all know what is SBCC. SBCC is social behavior change communication. is a strategy use of communication approaches to promote changes in people's knowledge, attitudes, norms, beliefs, and their behaviors, because we all understand that people have different, are different in terms of their knowledge, their attitude, and their beliefs and their behaviors. So it just helps us, SBCC assist humanitarian actors to know how to communicate with the public when there's emergency and to ensure that there is change in their behaviors and attitude. So as we know, behavior is a really complex phenomenon because it is influenced by factors either within an individual or even beyond the individual, may it be community, society, and even the political aspect of it. So behavior is a complex and it needs to be very strategic. You need to be very strategic to be able to change people's behavior. So SBCC has come a long way and it's now a key element in any emergency or crisis preparedness plan, and it is integrated in all stages of emergency response. And this is because since emergency started back then, SBCC has come out to be a very important tool to be used during especially public health emergencies. So it is good to learn SBCC, especially in the humanitarian world, so that you can be able to know how to effectively communicate with the public. So there are key terms and concepts when we talk about SBCC, and SBCC is not only used in emergencies, it's all used in all contexts, may it be in our daily activities as a health aspect or even in development. That's why sometimes it's called communication for development, because it is used in all contexts. But when we talk about emergencies, now that's where now we start using words like risk communication and community engagement. We use words like rumor tracking. We use words like social listening, because those are part of the SBCC activities. But when we talk about all other contexts, we talk about the social and behavior change models and all that. So, but at the center of it all, there's need to have community engagement is key, both in emergencies and normal circumstances. Community feedback is key in both the situations, and also SBC will be used. So those are the key terms. So for today, we'll just be talking about RCCE, that is risk communication and community engagement, the social listening, and the rumor tracking. So that's what we'll discuss today when we are talking about crisis communication. So what is this RCC? So RCC full meaning is risk communication, as I've said, and community engagement. And this is where now in risk communication, that's where now when it comes to risk communication in emergencies, that's where now we start talking about crisis communication. So it's a really key pillar for ensuring quality infectious disease outbreak response. As I've said, it puts people and community at the center, because you are dealing with the people. So you have to ensure you understand them better for you to communicate effectively. So it's an evidence-based approach and deploys a suite of context-based activities that adapt with the response. And it's we all see posters, we hear radio communication and all that. And it is good to understand, why do we have this poster and why not the other poster? Why are we using poster? Why are we using radio? And what messages are we passing? So that is risk communication and community engagement work to do that. So what is really risk communication? It's a form of dialogue in real time, because during emergencies, during outbreak, there's need and there's urgency. And so there's need for a real-time information. And so it creates this dialogue between health actors, between humanitarian actors and the national government, may it be regional government, may it be community. So there's that need for dialogue in real time. So, and that is the work of the risk communication and community engagement, to ensure that that is achieved. So what is the goal of the risk communication? It's just to ensure that everyone who is at risk has guidance, has facts that they need to make informed decisions for them to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. So any platform which is used, any channel which is used, any context that is used and which contributes to this goal of just ensuring everyone has the right information is part of the risk communication. And so what we are calling crisis communication is actually RCC during an emergency. That is what now it is understood as crisis communication. And in crisis communication, we are trying to bridge a gap between public health context and the public context. Because remember, when you are at the public health context, the thoughts and the thinking is different a bit because you are thinking scientifically. You are thinking about severity of the disease. You are thinking about response of the disease. But at the public context, the thoughts are different because here the public is thinking, how is my survival in terms of economic situation, the emotional aspect, how are my kids, why are they not going to school, when will they go to school, and all that. So the risk communication or crisis communication tries to bridge that gap so that we can come to an understanding of each other. Because there are factors which are at play here. There is always an agents of information. The events are urgently because there is death, there is all that. So there is urgent events. And also, so it needs rapid decision-making in the humanitarian aspect, in the national government, in the regional government, and all that. So there's rapid decision-making. There's also uncertainty, as we all learned from COVID, the recent outbreak. There's uncertainty, a lot of it in science, because up to date, sometimes we don't understand the nitty-gritties of the risk and even the source of this pandemic. And also, there's always surprises and setbacks. And then there's a behavioral component of it when we are talking about emergencies. There's always public anxiety. So these are just characteristic of factors which will influence risk communication or crisis communication. There is always potential extreme to public reaction and political context at play. So all these factors will influence our crisis communication on how we deal with things. And we have to bridge that gap between the public health context and the public context. Yeah. So to ensure as we are bridging that gap, the first thing we need to understand is the risk perception of people. And risk perception, or how they perceive that risk, is the individual assessment about possibilities of harm to one's livelihood or the local economy. As we talked about, the public health aspect and the public concept aspect is a bit different. For the public, they will always think about what is harm when it comes to this harm. Is it how is it going to bring it to my livelihood, to affect my livelihood? How is it affecting the economy? And so crisis communication will always, for us to achieve healthy behaviors, we need to have to understand their risk perceptive, and in order to influence this perception to promote protective behaviors. So risk communication, it aligns risk perception with the level of concern needed to promote health recommendation, because as we are going to see, risk perception differs. Yeah, it differs because from the just concluded COVID, we observed different risk perception. We observed on the left side where it was overly cautious. On the right side, others were overwhelmed and fatalistic, and also under concerned. And so the purpose of the risk communication or crisis communication is just to ensure that there is right level of risk to promote recommendation actions. Because what are the characteristics of overly cautious perception? you'll observe that there is perceived high level of risk. They even are afraid to participate in low risk but important activities. And we observed this because you find that other routine vaccination stops. People are afraid to go to the hospital to get the important vaccination for children. And then routine medical visits, some people are afraid of going to the hospital because they'll get that. So overly cautious, we need also to understand that, are they overly cautious? And then when it comes to overwhelmed, this is a person who have low level of self-efficacy. They are not confident enough with the solution which are being offered. They perceive high level of risk, and they also perceive that there is no hope. So also you have to understand that and be able now to come up with effective risk communication to counter attack that. And then there is under concern. We also observed that because these are people who you find they have optimism bias. They are over optimism, unrealistic optimism, because they just understand that I cannot get this disease, I'm safe, and all that. And then it's also under concern. It's where now we observed about pandemic fatigue. After a long time of practicing these behaviors change, you become fatigued, and then perceived low level of risk. They perceive there's no level. So crisis communication help us to come up with the right level of risk to promote recommendation actions. Because when there is overly cautious people, they bring to themselves harmful actions, and you need to counterattack that. And then when there is overwhelming or under concerned, then there will be no action taken, and this will contribute to prolonging the outbreak. So you need to have right level of risk, and that's why we need crisis communication. So some of the messages, how you frame messages to influence the risk perception, as we have observed, you have to combine hope and worry sometimes. It is good, you have to balance that. Combine hope and worry. For those people who have over optimism, then now you have to bring a bit of worry in them. And then those people who are over worried, now you have to bring a bit of hope on them. So let's, for example, we say overcoming of optimism bias by increasing salience of the disease. For example, you can emphasize identifiable victims in messages and stories. Yeah, those are individuals that can be easily imaging themselves for belonging to people they care about. For when you find their community which they don't believe they can get the disease, you can emphasize on bringing victims who they are related to that situation, to that community, to that local situation, and all that. And you also tailor materials and messages to fit the local situation so that they can be able to mirror themselves to belong to that, and they can take care about it. And then for the over concerned and maybe fatalistic, there's need to build confidence and self-efficacy. Yeah, so messages will be actionable, whereby you build their confidence, you highlight actions to partner to control diseases, you highlight progress which are being made so that they can know there is hope. Yeah, and you make messages which they can be able to easily action for themselves and make it very easy for them, so that they can know they are able and ready to tackle the epidemic. So those are some of the, you can tailor-made messages during crisis and able to reach out to these type of risk perception and able to counterattack that. So there's also, apart from the risk, after understanding the risk perception of people, there's also something else we cover when we are managing or we are coming up with crisis communication, and that is uncertainties. Because in all public health emergencies, there will always be uncertainties, and common areas of uncertainties include causes, the scope of harm, who are the risk groups. Those are things you don't understand easily or quickly. And what are the effective interventions? Are they working? What are the outcomes related to health threats and all that? So it is good when you are coming up with crisis communication messages, you tackle also uncertainties and able to cover those areas like the causes, the scope of harm, risk groups, effective intervention. And so most of the time you find that there are three kinds of uncertainties, and you need to cover, that is the unknowns. What are the unknowns from the pandemic or the emergency? What are the conflicting messages? Because you'll find one area saying this, the other person saying this. Even in humanitarian actors, you'll find one humanitarian actor talking about the one issue on the other issue, and it's conflicting. So also the context matters, it becomes uncertain because of the economic and social players. So you need to cover, when you are talking about crisis communication, uncertainties is part of the messages to help you come up with a better to counterattack that. So in COVID, what were some of the uncertainties we observed? These were most of the uncertainty were, when will it be safe to embrace our friends? When will be COVID end? Is it already infected and recovered? When can my children go back to school? How can we balance needs of the economy with stopping COVID-19? How long, and all that. So the uncertainty are so many. And when we are coming up with this crisis communication, we need to answer some of these questions. Will COVID-19 mutate? And all that. So you should have these at the back of the mind when you're coming up with these messages. So another way of solving uncertainty is being transparent and consistency. So messaging to manage uncertainty, you have to be transparent and consistent. You should be direct and explicit to the public communication about uncertainties. And transparency is usually very highly valued. So, and transparency is just saying what is known and what is unknown. We know this, and we observed this when we were hearing WHO communication daily, and they always talked of, so far we know A, B, C, we still don't know A, B, C, D. So that was always to be direct, and so that you can even gain trust from the public. And then the information must be consistent. And consistent can come in different ways. One is time. It should be, that's why we saw communication being daily or after 2 days. And then between sources, between different actors, it should be the same. They should have the same consistency of information. And then if there is any discrepancies, it must be explained. And when maybe you don't have an answer for that information, you can also explain about how decisions are made. Yeah, you can say we are here, we are discussing this, the national is doing this and all that. So transparency is key and consistency is key during crisis management. And also even to solve many uncertainties in people. So another factor to consider is trust when you are talking about crisis communication. So you should also gain trust from public, either in community, either national, either in humanitarian world and all that. So the goal of this trust is just to ensure that the public can be able to build, can be able to trust the process, and also can be able to trust their they are health experts, or they are expert in solving that crisis. So what are the positive outcome of strong trust? Is one, it increased practice of health protection behaviors, because once they trust you, they will welcome your message. High level of risk message acceptance, that is true. Participation in preparedness activities, attendance at risk information meetings, and then also if maybe there is vaccine, they will accept that. Yeah, so trust is key. And how is trust built? So trust is built on different factors. One is the skill of the person communicating, and then the motive, the empathy, the integrity, and the relationship between the community or the public and the person they trust. So your skill, the risk managers should be competent, and they agree with other experts, you know. So we should see consistency in risk managers, and also we should see also agreement from one expert to another. There should be an agreement. That is how public view the skills. And then motives. When people judge the motives, they should be able to see that they are safe. If it is maybe we are tackling outbreak, they should be able to see safeguard of health. And then they should also see understanding and respect about their situation, and about they should also hear care when you're passing that messages, so that they can see you are concerned. Yes, we know it is hard time, and we know you don't have this, but we understand, you know. So they should hear empathy. And then integrity, that is when now they should hear truth. And that's why we said, when you don't know something, it's good you state it. This one we know, we are still investigating B. And then the relationship. Most of the time, people believe their own. And that's why when we are dealing in maybe crisis, people like to hear from their own, so that they can, because they share the values. They know they share the burden, and the consequences you give them, you will also experience. So these are some of the factors which come at play when you are talking about trust to public perception. And another way of ensuring during crisis communication, it is effective, is ensuring there's listening. And listening is where now we talked of community engagement. Community engagement, you have to have tools for listening, gathering data on the belief, on their attitudes, on their misinformation, and so that you can be able to now ensure that your communication is able to solve or answer some of the misinformation which are there. And there's no best way for listening. So it should be, first of all, localized to ensure it meets the needs of the people and they are able to use. So some of them are focus group, if it is in the community. If it is, we are talking about the public, the national, the citizens, you can come up with the surveys. Social media, nowadays we have social media. Then we can have interviews, we can have radios where there's analysis of radio and call shows, and they can give feedback and all that. So these are some of the tools which you can use, but you should be innovative as much as possible to just ensure that tools for listening, you're able to get the feedback. And then also something else during crisis communication, you should handle the rumors and misinformation. And the first thing is identify ways to detect and track this misinformation and refute them with evidence-based facts. An example is during Ebola, there was a lot of misinformation. And so one of the misinformation which was there is that the body bags which are being used, there were no bodies inside there. There were only rocks. So people believed and spread some rumors that the death was not that high, just that there was organ harvesting. So what the actors did, they came up with an evidence-based fact, whereby they redesigned their body bags. Instead of being white, it became clear, so that everyone can see that inside there's a body. So this is how actors come up with evidence-based, innovative ways of just refuting those misinformation, and people can take action. And then also it's good to respond to ongoing questions through channels they use frequently. Yeah, so observe what they use and you respond to that. And then open two-way channel sharing, such as the hotlines we talked about, the social media, the call-in radio, the TV shows, and all that. And also even going to the community itself and answering those questions and response. So also we said pre-test with members of the target population, provide multiple languages. So when you come up with a response, just provide multiple language and formats. And then we have people who are community amplifiers. So share with them so that it can reach broader reach and consistency. So, and engage the media, just understanding the narrative, the angles, and changing science and coverage so that you can stop the rumors. Because if we don't respond to these rumors and misinformation, they can derail their response or outbreak control. Also, another issue we look at when we are talking about response, crisis communication, is stigma. That is something also you can respond to. So stigma, we observed it even during COVID. There was a lot of stigma, especially initial. And so the language matters. And it's good to listen to what are some of the stigma and come up with a fact-based information. So it's good to showcase positive deviances. And this is where now you promote recovery stories through mass media, videos, and community events, so that to give people hope. You create also opportunity for stigmatized group to interact, so that someone don't feel alone, because as we said, language matters, and it can really affect the recoveries. And also it is good also, you can link up to existing activities that address stereotypes. Yeah, so to create a movement that show care, empathy for all. So what are the impact of stigma? One, stigma drive people to hide illness and to avoid discriminatory. And when they hide this illness, it is easy to spread. So it is good to solve the stigma part of it. It also refrains people from seeking healthcare immediately. And then also it prevents them from adopting healthy behaviors. So these are some of the examples of stigma we saw happening during COVID-19. And some of people were called crazy aunties. Those are some of the words which were used, or others were called super spreaders. And I'm sure even in your countries, you had names which were stigmatizing others. So it is good when we are coming with crisis communication, we solve also the stigma issue. And I've shared here a radio spot, an example of a radio spot which was used during vaccination campaign. And I just wanted to show you an example of crisis communication, how you solve certain issues that come up. For example, during vaccination of COVID, there were a lot of misinformation about one, virality of people. The vaccines were making people to be infertile. It was not good for pregnancy. It was not good for, there were a lot of misinformation. And so the work of the crisis communication team was to respond to those misinformation. And this is an example. And one, if you can observe it very well, it has been localized to ensure that it can be communicated to every language. This one is an example of a Kenyan radio spot. So you can see different language. It has been translated to different languages. You can see it there. And also it is localized in such a way, even if you hear the tune, maybe let me play it a bit, just sing a bit. You can see it, if you're a Kenyan, you can see it has really been localized, sorry, to fit the local situation, even the tone.
Asante sana daktari.
Unajisikiaje leo?
Daktari, mzito. Mtoto ninayembeba anazidi kuwa mzito kila siku.
Na kwa bahati mbaya ukipata COVID-19 ukiwa mjamzito.
You know, so if someone from Kenya, you can hear it is really relating to Kenyan environment, and people are able to relate. So this was just an example of one of crisis communication. So I don't think and that is the explanation, that's the meaning, and it has been explained very well. There were others even this one was for pregnant women, how to just respond to that rumor. And also there were others a lot about virality, about infertility, about so many issues which came up. And I'm sure even in other countries there was such, because crisis communication is always about don't avoid, or don't something we call it maybe ignore. Don't ignore those misinformation, because those are the things which will derail the response. So it is good to come up with, so crisis communication helps in solving this. So that is the end of my presentation. And as I said, SBCC is very wide, and it needs a lot of, it is very important for all expert humanitarian actors to just ensure how to communicate, which are these models, because I've just talked about risk perception. To understand people's perception, there are evidence-based models, there are evidence-based theories which are there to help you just understand people perception, how they perceive risk, how they perceive behaviors, and all that. So SBCC is wide, and I welcome you to have a course with Humanitarian Global so that you can understand better. This was just an overview. Yes, so thank you so much for listening, and back to you, Diana.
Thank you so much, Margret, for that wonderful presentation on crisis communication and SBCC. These are lessons from global emergencies. At this point, participants, we've come to our Q&A session. So we do have a number of questions here that have come from participants, and I'll start from Basilio, who says, hello, thank you for the nice presentation. I have one observation for your assistance. Are there any different SBCC approaches in the emergency and development context?
Can I answer that?
Yes, please, kindly do.
Okay, so thank you so much. Is it Josia? Yes, so we talked about, are there different approaches, SBCC approaches in emergencies and development context? SBCC approaches are always the same. It's just that in emergency, due to urgency, we don't use a lot of models, don't work, because emergency is all about urgency and ensuring that we respond to and we control the emergency. But now when it comes to development context, now we can be able to have, or we can be able to use most models, because we have the time, we can be able to, we have the time, we have the time, we have maybe we have the resources. Sometimes emergency, there's no time, there's no resources, there's so many competing factors. So, and that's why sometimes most emergency are limited compared to the development context. But SBCC approaches are always the same, because when you look at the risk perception, you use the same models and the same approaches to come up with risk approaches, risk perceptions of people. So It's the same. It's just that emergency, you have to be very innovative. You have to be very observant and all that. Yes. Yeah, I think those are my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Margret. Our next question comes from Felicia, who's actually an alumni of our SBCC training. And she asks, take for example, the wash sector, whereby the government is striving to ensure wash facilities are adequately provided in schools and health centers across the urban and rural areas. How do you give a message combining hope and worry for community to buy in?
Thank you, Felicia, for that question. This one for wash in government or in schools or health centers in urban and rural areas. This one is, first of all, this is not an emergency. This is an urban development. This is context. And so there are so many strategies you can use, so many models you can use, especially in wash sector. And it is good. Maybe you can use the CLTS when it's rural, and then there's something SLTS in schools. You can come up with FAST in health centers. Now, there's so much. I think you need to approach it in a diverse way, I can say. And so it needs a lot of observation, a lot of research, need assessments. Just you can conduct a need assessment so that you can know what is really the problem. After identifying the problem, now that's where now you can come up, you can use the strategies maybe you learned, the models which we have to just know, to use it to come up with better messaging. So we don't have a one thing where I can say this one is for health center, this for school. No, you have to localize it to fit the context, the situation. So for me, I'll first observe, conduct a need assessment, understand the population very well, understand their perception on risk, and then come up with the better messaging, which is aligned to the methodologies we have. So if you need further guidance, maybe you can reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margret. And as I read the next two questions, I ask participants who would like to ask for their questions live during the webinar at this time. You can raise your hand and we will allow you to speak. So the next question comes from Prince. Prince asks, how would you carry out risk communication as part of the cholera response project in a rural district setup with a large number of religious objectors to medical intervention?
Okay, thank you, Prince, for that question. So risk communication, as we said, is mostly used in response, and cholera is one of them. Yeah. So, and we said you have to localize it because there are so many factors which are different from one sector to another. And this one I've seen it's about religious factor which is playing. And now to buy in these religious objectors, you have to make sure you let's say, is it by the religious leaders, bring them on the table, discuss. You have to bring them on the table so that they can see, you even take them for education and all that, so that they can be able to understand. And now when you get a buy-in from them, now you can be able to, they can help you now to be ambassadors for change. That's how I can look at it. But you need also to understand the setup very well and be able to know who are these people who can help you to change that perception, to change that religious, because you can't go against them. So if you cannot beat them, then join them. So what it means, you have to first win the religious leaders first. Yeah, that is my thoughts on that.
Thank you so much. As I read the next question, this is from Lucky Gibson from Liberia. I'll ask Lord Timothy, prepare yourself with your question. We will allow you to speak after Margaret's answer. So Lucky Gibson from Liberia says, sometime in RCCE, communities use their value system to shadow health practices against real-time messages. How can you impact this issue to achieve outcomes?
Thank you so much, Lucky. It is true. There are some communities which use their value system to shadow the health practices, and that's why it is important when you understand that communities that way. It is important to now, before you come up with any RCCE, go to that community so that you can come up with something which is related to them, because the reason why they are using their value system instead of the health practices is because they have belief on their system. So why can you maybe just go to that system and see how you can navigate around it to ensure that it is preventing what you are trying to prevent. At the same time, the community can be can accept it. So it is a matter of just being innovative and be able, because we said RCCC at the center is community. So if it is not doing the purpose for the community, then there's no need of it. So just go to the community, see how you can navigate around that. Yes, because for example, during COVID, there's something we as global, even WHO was saying, stay at home, wear mask and all that. But can you imagine a community's pastoralist community? Can you tell the community, the pastoralist community, can you take the risk communication to start talking about staying at home? A pastoralist cannot agree because he has 100 herd of cattle. There's no way he can stay at home for 1 week seeing his cattle dying. So for your messages to be reasonable to them, it has to ensure that it also has space in their value system. So for me, is first go to that community. Yes, at the back of your mind, you know what is good for them, but how can you be able to align it with their system and make it work for both of you? Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Margret, for that. As we wind up participants, allow me to bring on Alo Timothy with a question. And some of the questions, we might not be able to address them in our webinar today. However, we will be addressing them in our community forum. This is Humanitarian Global Wave Community Forum, and I will be sharing the link. Just shared it right now with everyone to be able to join our community forum. So Timothy, if you can hear us, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, can you all hear me? Good morning from here in Nigeria. Okay, so my name is Timothy. I'm actually speaking from Nigeria. I have 3 questions to ask. I don't know if I could go ahead. So my question is based on 3 things: the strategy and preparedness, then the engagement and community involvement, and then the technological advancement and innovation. So for the strategy and preparedness, I would love to ask that, how can organizations better prepare and plan for effective crisis communication response? And this is because we are in the transformative future era, where we prepare for the future, even in the present. So how can an organization better prepare and plan for effective crisis communication response? So that's one question. Then the second question under engagement and community involvement is, what method or tools can be used to ensure inclusive and effective communication to diverse community during crisis? Because I'm in Nigeria, where we have different cultures, different ideologies and beliefs. So what method or tools can be used to ensure inclusive and effective communication to diverse communities during crisis? Then my last question under the technological advancement and innovation is there any technological advancements that has changed the landscape of crisis communication and the SBCC? I want to know if there are technological advancements to that area that has changed the landscape. And then what emerging technology or innovation can help approach that has shown promising advancement, right, in communication during emergency? Is there any technology we can leverage on during emergency for a better service? Yes, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Timothy. Let me use the word Timothy. Thank you so much for your questions. And I'll start with the strategic preparedness on crisis for planning, preparedness and planning for effective crisis communication. So for planning and preparation, I think these are my thoughts. There's need maybe for, like the way I think WHO has set a pace, because as we said, crisis communication has evolved over time. And if you compare how it was handled during Ebola back in 2014, and right now how we are able to also respond to COVID, you can see a bit of evolvement there and a bit of improvement. So, and this is because we learned from the mistakes which happened back in Ebola response when it comes to crisis communication. And this is, so one thing we saw, which I've seen it preparation being effective, is coming up with a strong preparation and planning committee. And this starts from the global, then working groups, a very strong committee working groups, which are made of experts from different regions, from different continents, and they just bring their expertise on the table and come up with good policies. Yeah, and then now national can be able to come up, being able to also have a committee, and now to localize to fit the national way of thinking or way of living. And they also use the policies which came up from the WHO. So it is just coming up with a very strong committee who are aggressive, very vigorous and active to just learn from information, learn from past experiences and improve better. So preparation is all about people working together. And when we work together, we come up with solid and very better preparation and planning for crisis communication. And then the second question was all about community engagement, the tools and the methods for inclusivity, effective communication. My take is, as you have said, your community, the community are differ, especially African communities differs with culture, their beliefs. And so even if there are tools already in place, there are methodologies, a lot of them in place, especially SBCC methodology. There are so many because there are a number. And so once you learn these methodologies and when it comes to now implementation and working with community, you have to localize and customize them to ensure that it is able to solve the problem of that community. And that's why we said community is at the center of crisis communication. So the first thing, the tools and the methods are in place. When you go to WHO, what do you call it, website, you'll get all these tools for community engagement, for risk communication, methodologies, and all that. They are there. When you go to the CDC, they're also there. But now let's custom, as humanitarian actors who are working in African context, we need to customize to meet and also do research so that we can effectively assist our communities to come with effective crisis communication, which are inclusive to our needs, our beliefs, our culture, and all that. And then now when it comes to technological advancement, it is true, there's a lot of advancement. And if you see the innovative approaches which were used during COVID response, it is because we are not tied down to the basics. We need to utilize, that's why we utilize a lot of social media to pass information, especially to reach to the youths. So you have to use this technological advancement. Talk of now, we are talking of AI. You need to start using them. And I've seen WHO have started using these EAIs to just pass this information quicker and easier and faster, to come up with better images and pass information easily, and people are able to understand. And also cartoons. We have seen cartoons being used to reach out to children for during crisis communication. We saw that, and even videos, to just pass better information, and especially graphical wise. So these are some of the technological I can talk about, but I'm sure there are others which I have not come across, and it is us to go just be on the lookout and all that. So thank you so much, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Margret. I believe, Timothy, you've been sufficiently answered. And in case if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Humanitarian Global. As Abdirazak Mohammed prepares himself with his question, I'll just read out one question from Tilka. So Tilka says, thank you for the presentation. If silence is a form of communication, can we remain silent in front of certain crises?
Yes, I can say yes, because I talked about rumor or misinformation. There's something we call structural crisis communication. In crisis communication, there's something called structural communication. This is whereby there's a rumor going on about, like, let me take an example of what I said about the body bags. So when we are responding to when they were responding to Ebola, they talked of the responders were using body bags to harvest organs. And so there was no need of response there. So what actors did, they went silent. But what they did, they redesigned the body bags. So and that's why we say there is no one shot on crisis communication. What you see, what can work, is what you use. When you see there's need for just silence and change the structure of how you maybe use things, or how you utilize use these commodities, it is good. You can go silent and change the structure. Another way is there's someone who was taking a research, and they talked about, at first they talked about hand washing, and they were very vocal. It was in a school. They were very vocal about it, about wash your hands after toilet, wash your hands after toilet, but only 18% were doing it. So what the researcher did, he didn't communicate. He went silent, but put structures, a very good structure where he put footpath and all that, and observed. Because it's called structural communication, where he changed the structure way of hand washing. He put those hands just to show someone you need to wash your hands, and it changed the numbers from 18% to 54%. So sometimes it's good to go silent and just change the structure of doing things. That is my take.
Thank you so much, Margaret. And that also answers Felicia's question, which she stated, in case of silence, can it be followed with actions? At this point, we're going to take our last question from Abdirazak Mohammed. And participants, we have been able to share the links for you to be able to join our community forum, where we have further discussions on today's topic, as well as links for you to be able to register for our upcoming SBCC course. Remember, we cover more of this in-depth analysis when it comes to SBCC, when it comes to today's topic. So I encourage us to click on the links and register for the upcoming SBCC training. Abdirazak, if you can hear me, welcome with your question.
And thank you, Diana and Louisa, for this good presentation today. Really, I very appreciate all of you. My first question is, how does SBCC different from traditional communication approaches in the context of global emergency since I'm in Somalia? My second question is, how do you ensure that communication reaches vulnerable or marginalized populations in mindset of global emergencies? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdirazak. Hope I've not murdered your name. So how is SBCC different from traditional communication? It's a bit different. I can say it's different because in traditional communication, we used to just communicate. For example, I can give an example of communication, traditional communication. We used to just talk about this disease kills, this disease has no cure, this disease has no kill. So it used to promote fear and all that, so that we didn't first observe community, understand their way of living. It was just communicating for the purpose of communicating. But SBCC is now where you put social perspective into communication, behavioral methodologies into communication. You consider so many factors for you to communicate. You just don't put words into radio. You don't just put words into posters. No, you have to think, what am I trying to address socially? What am I trying to address behavioral? So SBCC is more advanced. It's more aware, it's more cultural sensitive, it has a lot to consider. So that is my take on difference between SBCC and traditional communication. I didn't get your second question. Kindly repeat.
My second question is, how do you ensure that information reaches vulnerable or marginalized populations in the mindset of global emergencies? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So how do information reach, you ensure information reaches to vulnerable communities? I think from my take, we always forget the vulnerables, especially, and when you talk about vulnerable, who are these people you're talking about and the marginalized? Are they, you have to define that, define vulnerability in your context. Are they people living with disabilities? Are they children? Are they women? So you have to first of all define that. After definition, then now customize, listen to them. Listen to their views, listen to what they need at that time, so that you can be able to solve, not even solving, just responding to their needs. That is my take. So I would like you to welcome you to SBCC training, just the way Diana said. We could talk more about it, about this. We can interrogate all these methodologies. We can interrogate all these. So I welcome you to SBCC training so that we can learn more. So I hope I've answered your question, and thank you. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margret, for taking us through today's topic, crisis communication and SBCC. Lessons from Global Emergencies. With that, participants, we've come to the end of today's webinar. I'd like to appreciate those of us, our attendees who've been very, very interactive in the chat and Q&A section. So thank you so much for your interaction. As I did mention, some of the questions we've not been able to address them in today's webinar in the interest of time. We will be addressing them in our community forum, as well as in the upcoming SBCC training workshop. Remember, I did mention the dates. The dates for this one, the next upcoming one is from the 4th to 8th December, and it's offered both on-site and online. So if you're interested in it, do click on the registration forms that we have shared with you and register for this upcoming training. I also wish to thank Margret so much for having taken care of us today, having taken us through the entire topic when it comes to SBCC and SBCC and lessons from global emergencies. Thank you so much. I wish to finally thank the entire Humanitarian Global team for having facilitated this webinar. Remember, we have webinars every Wednesday. So next Wednesday, we also have a webinar, and the webinar is also live streamed on Facebook. At this point, I do bid you farewell, and hopefully we meet again next Wednesday, same time. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you so much.
My name is Adam Mohammed. I am a humanitarian person and a farmer at the same time. I am also a Nigerian. My journey as a humanitarian started sometimes around 2016. In the NYSC camp. You know, when you finish your degree program, you need to go for a year training. So in Nigeria, we call it NYSC, National Youth Service Corps. So while at the camp, I have this staff of CUSO International. CUSO International actually is a Canadian humanitarian organization that is working towards ensuring no poverty and no equality among the community in all. So they approached the serving corps members at the camp, telling them to come and volunteer with the organization in providing services in certain communities that they will be posted to. At first, I wasn't interested because I am a farmer. Then I realized that there are several areas where I can render my service to. I can also render my service to youths, encouraging them to have a sustainable means of livelihood in agriculture. There and then, I key in, I applied, I became a volunteer. So after volunteering with CUSO International, I then had the interest of working as a humanitarian person. I worked with CUSO International for a year, and thereafter I moved for my second degree studies, Masters in Agricultural Economics at Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. So because of the distance of the place I was rendering the humanitarian service and the place I'm studying, I had to then resign from that particular role. Thereafter, while I was working, I was studying with at Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. Then I also had the opportunity to also volunteer with Action Against Hunger in Borno State. Because of the insurgency, the people in the IDP camp needed humanitarian service. Then I said to myself, I would volunteer to provide that service. After working with Action Against Hunger, thereafter I worked as a farm manager with Agro News Nigeria, and then here I am today working with FX Commodities Exchange, impacting life and providing humanitarian services to the humanity. While volunteering with KUSO International and Action Against Hunger, Feed the Future, and all that on other short projects, I then developed that inherent, will I say, likeness of providing humanitarian services to the entire humanity. Then one day I was sitting on my laptop checking through online. Then I decided, I said, no, I need to look at some kind of humanitarian courses that I would attend so I can enhance my skills and my ability to deliver more in the humanitarian sector. So I went online and then I was searching there, and then I came across Humanitarian Global,